And I am joining, I am joining you from Mexico City, and the topic today is inquiry-based learning. So hopefully you can see my slide has changed. My slide has now changed to from in this session. Thank you very much, Marcella. Thank you. Yes. So in this session, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what inquiry-based learning is. We're going to look at the challenges of inquiry-based learning, which is really important because if you don't address the challenges, it's never going to happen inside the classroom. Then we're going to have some examples of how it can be put into the classroom. I'm going to give you very short conclusions, and then in about 45 minutes or so, we're going to have questions. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. You can type them in at any time, and my colleagues are going to collect those, and I'm going to deal with those questions at the end. So brilliant. I'm going to try to follow the chat, but it's going to go very, very quickly. Oh, you have an echo. My colleagues will deal with that. Hopefully that's not me causing the echo. Right, so this is the structure of the session. So let's get started with let's get started with what is inquiry-based learning. Right, I would like to ask you, I mean, I haven't met most of you. There's not a lot of opportunity for close interaction. Can I ask you to type into the chat which letter corresponds to your knowledge of inquiry-based? Have you already started doing it? Yeah, wow, this is going so fast. But I can see more or less. Yeah, lots of B's and C's. There's an A. Yes, fewer A's, and mostly B's and C's. So yes, some of you have some knowledge. Doesn't seem to be anybody who doesn't have any knowledge, or very few people. Oh, there are a few people. Well, welcome to the session. Hopefully I can give you some useful information. So thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is start with a quote. I don't like putting long texts on the screen. I don't think it's very exciting. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into 3 different parts. This is a quote which comes from one of our papers. There is the link at the bottom there for you. I will also be mentioning this at the end. Yeah. So what is inquiry-based learning? There are certain principles behind inquiry-based learning. One of them is curiosity. When students are curious, their learning becomes more purposeful. It's based very much around, we want students to be curious because that makes the learning much deeper and much more purposeful for students. The second point here, inquiry-based learning seeks to tap into students' curiosity by giving them the opportunity to engage in authentic discovery. So it is the students who are doing the work by exploring and discovering answers to their questions. Right, we're going to come to this because that might sound a little bit challenging or a little bit adventurous for some classrooms. Students ask their own questions about a topic that interests them, discover answers, and share their answers with others. This is one way, or this is the classic view of inquiry-based learning. I'm going to show you that it's not always as open as this, that there are ways of incorporating this into your classroom without the students leading absolutely everything. Because if you are new to inquiry-based learning, this may look a little bit adventurous. Yep. Okay. So what I would like to do is share with you a model of inquiry-based learning. I don't know if you have explored this before, but what you may find is that my model is different from a model you have explored before. I worked before with a 5-stage model. I'm going to show you a 4-stage model. People say, yes, some of you have seen, some of you have not. Lots of different people. So It always starts off with an engagement stage. As I said before, you may have models that say something different, but you'll see that this is incorporated into the engagement stage. And in the engagement stage, the teacher will set the objectives, the topic will be introduced, and typically we work with questions, leading questions and sub-questions. I will explain what I mean by those a little bit later. And a common tool for working is the KWL chart. A quick question, do you know what KWL stands for? Some of you say yes, some of you say no. I wonder if anybody's going to type in the answers. Wow. Ah, yes. And this is really important. There are different versions. Yes, somebody wrote know, wonder, and learn. Yes, the one I use is what do I know, what do I want to know, and what did I learn? So there are different versions of this, and don't get stressed if I'm showing you a different version from the one that you might already know. Yes, know, want to know, and learn, learnt, or as somebody else said, wonder. The middle one can be wonder. So that's very much about the curiosity. Thank you very much. Good. People joining from all over the place. Absolutely wonderful. And then the teacher's role here is to guide students to formulate questions. And I'm going to show you a little bit later on that there are different models with different amounts of guidance coming from the teacher. Right. I need to keep. If I'm doing this with my eyes because I'm checking the time, my Britishness means I need to try to keep on time. The second stage that we have in this, the stages of the inquiry-based learning model, is exploration. You can probably work out what is happening here. The students look for answers. The students may be looking for answers on their own, or with a lot of guidance from the teacher, or with the teacher supplying the material for them. It is very important that the teacher keeps in mind the questions that have been asked, which are the leading questions and the sub-questions, and constantly reminds students of those. And then to help the students build and expand on those questions. Wow, there's people coming from all over the place. Absolutely wonderful. Then we have communication. I think this is the bit that makes most sense for language teachers because, well, the communicative approach, something we've been doing for several decades. Language teaching is very much about communication. And sometimes when we're exploring topics, maybe as teachers we don't feel like we're doing our job exactly. So in the communication, there are kind of two parts of this. There's the part when the students are actually working together, exploring, collecting information, content, trying to answer the question. And there's another part when the students share their findings with others. So communication, that can actually be combined with the exploration, and then there is a separate stage when you would actually communicate that with others. And the last part here in this particular model is reflection. And here the students reflect on what they have learnt, and the students evaluate the learning process. So, the hardest part, you say, yes, it is a process. You have to train your students to do this. I always think that, okay, this is what I want to do when you start a year with your students. But if it takes the whole year for them to develop that skill, that's good, that's fine. You've achieved something. Don't expect to achieve it right at the very beginning. It's very much about training your students. And there's the reflection on two parts. One is on what they have learnt, which is about the content. And the other one is about the process, which I think is absolutely, they don't like the reflection. Don't care. Force them through it. I mean, make it short. Don't make it horrific for them. But if students are able to evaluate their learning process, what they're doing well, where they could do better. This is all helping them for the future. Good. Right, so those are the 4 stages, and as I said before, you will find other models. I've worked with a couple of 5-stage models, which I quite like as well. They don't know how to do it. Well, maybe you as a teacher, you're not sure how to do it. Try things out, see what works. Right, so that is a quick overview of a model to implement inquiry-based learning in your classroom. But I also want to look at some of the advantages or benefits of inquiry-based learning. Here I've got 4, and I want to go through each of these in turn. So the first benefit, the first benefit I want to look at for inquiry-based learning is learner engagement. Inquiry-based learning can make for more dynamic and motivating classes. And I don't think there's a single teacher in the world who does not want dynamic and motivating classes. And the reason is because the students are not dissimilar to project-based learning. Very true. No, you're not wrong. You are correct. Because learners are actively involved. Yes. So the learners are doing the work. I think any single time in a classroom when the students are doing the work in a way which is challenging but not too challenging, and they feel comfortable, they know what they have to do, being asked the right questions, Elizabeth, good point, that is something that will make a class more dynamic. Independent learning. Again, I was going to ask you a yes/no question, but I honestly think that any student, any teacher who has students who have some degree of autonomy will have a more successful class. Yes. Okay, so help students become more autonomous, know their strengths, and it can help improve self-esteem and confidence. There are many students who come into our classrooms who don't have a lot of confidence, and if you can build confidence in your students, absolutely wonderful. But this methodology is one way that you can help build this. And it is a process. You're not going to get results right from the beginning. You as a teacher, if you've never done it before, you're going to have to learn the process as well. But there's some absolutely beautiful things that come out of this. A third one, C, develop a growth mindset. Help students move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And if you're not 100% sure what I mean by a mindset, it is beliefs about how intelligence, talent and ability are rigid and unchanged. Some students come into your class and say, I can't learn English. And tell me, has that happened to you? That you have a student who says, I can't learn English, and that their mindset, yes, yes, that is a fixed mindset. If you can change that student from a fixed mindset to an open mindset, where they say, yes, I'm not brilliant at languages. I do struggle. I don't have a natural talent, but I can. Wow, that's absolutely fantastic. I've actually thought, this is something I'm trying to think about, especially while I work in a Spanish-speaking country. There are lots of cognates. I really think I want to develop my first ever true beginner class based purely around cognates. So the student sees, hey, I actually know hundreds of words already in English because they're cognate in my first language. They say they don't understand English. Depends on their language background, but I think you can actually, show students, hey, you're not starting from zero. And that's difficult, but inquiry-based learning can do that. Skills for the future. Learn the skills that are crucial for lifelong learning and success in the wider community. I honestly think that one of our jobs as teachers is to show students, something happened to my slides. Hopefully it's going to come back again. Okay, doesn't matter. I can continue. Yes, well, I am distracted, but I should try to continue. Yes, I really think the objective of sending students to school is to prepare them for life. I think that's the idea. Yes, something happened to the slides, but we're back again. Hopefully everybody can see those. all from Managua, Nicaragua. Been there. Wow, Catherine. So quick question, which of those four, and you can just type the letter into the chat, which of those do you think is the most important? Which of those four benefits? B, D, C, A. A tip for online teaching, if you ask students a question that just requires a one finger response, that can really get a lot more activity happening. Yeah, there's no correct answer. Yes, I can't pronounce many. My dyslexia does not help me do this very well. Yeah, but the point of asking you that is to think, yes, I want to give this a go because it's going to help me. Great. Okay, so I want to move on. So that is an overview of what it is. There's a methodology and the benefits. All of that is fantastic and beautiful, but we have to address the challenges. There are a number of challenges involved in language teaching in general, and there are, brilliant, Safa, if I'm pronouncing or Mohammed. Yes, time, definitely. Well, you've already started. You've anticipated my question more or less. Yeah, I've broken this down into two sections. I've broken it down into general challenges of teaching, and you've already come up time. Yes, time in two senses. One, not enough time to prepare. As a teacher, the more hours you have, the more money you earn. That's a kind of a general rule. And the more you teach, the less time you have to prepare. So that is a challenge we have to overcome. Not enough time in class. I've not met a single teacher who says, yes, I have plenty of time to do everything I want. There's never enough time. And motivation, somebody mentioned there, Milagros. Yes, motivation. Are all of your students motivated? The answer is no, for various reasons. And these are general challenges that we face. Right. I want to add to this challenges of inquiry-based learning. And here we have three more. So I'm going from the bottom to the top. I decided to do it in this way. I'm not sure why I did this now, but D, challenges of inquiry-based learning. D, asking questions, asking good questions. It is very difficult, and it is a skill of all teachers to be able to ask good quality questions, which are not going to confuse students, which are not going to send them off in the wrong direction, which are not going to overstress them or challenge. Yeah. And then finding the answers. If in the kind of the true open inquiry-based way of working, we're going to have students asking questions and trying to find the answers. Wow, where are they going to find the answers? Well, we're going to look at different forms of this in a minute. They can answer whatever. Yes, well, we're going to come to that in a minute. And the one I think is going to affect a lot of teachers. I am a native English speaker of English. I teach English. I have an advantage over the majority of non-native speakers in the fact that I don't get stressed about unexpected language, but most teachers do. And just on that topic quickly, I would always, I like non-native English teachers a lot because they've often gone through the process of learning the language and they do tend to understand their students more. Not that one is better than the other, but don't feel bad if you are a non-native English speaking teacher of English. Now, so we've got different models of inquiry-based learning. 1 o'clock in the morning, you should be in bed. Or maybe you are watching in bed, I'm not sure. Yes, we have different models of inquiry-based learning. So a structured approach. This is where the teacher is controlling practically everything. It's teacher-directed. The teacher provides the questions. The teacher provides access to the content and materials, and the teacher provides the step-by-step instruction. If you want to get into inquiry-based learning and you're unfamiliar with it, the best thing to do is to start with a structured approach. It will help your students understand what they have to do, and it will make you feel more comfortable, because there's nothing worse than losing control, right? Then we have another version, the guided, which is a mix of teacher and student directed. The teacher provides the questions, but the students take more of the responsibility for the direction and the method of the inquiry. So maybe the teacher is providing some of the input, but the students are going off and exploring themselves. And it's not really that we have these three different kinds. It's kind of a line that goes across all of them, but just to give you an idea. And the third, the most exciting probably, but the most difficult, because it takes time to develop these skills as a teacher and to train your students to do this. Oh, can we mix the three? Yes, you can, Julia. Yes. Yes, it's not that it's 1, 2, or 3. That's a really good question. Yeah, the open is the best, the most wonderful. But if you're not ready for it and your students are not ready for it, it's not going to work. So start simple, start controlled, and then build up. So the students choose the question, the students choose the method of the direction of the inquiry, and the teacher's role is to support. And this is where your questions come in. So those are, we've got 3 different levels here. Now, I want to show you something. And technically, this is not inquiry-based learning. This is an activity which comes from a paper which is published on our Oxford Teachers Club. And it is an idea of an activity called Create a Unit Poster. I'm going to show you this activity, and it's technically not inquiry-based learning, but it is. It is, and it's not. Maybe I should explain what I mean. Okay, I'll show you the activity, and then I'll ask you to think about it. So this is a regular class, a regular teacher. The students have a course book, and they've been working on a unit, and you finish the unit, and you want to do like a review, right? So this is one way you can do it. Yes. The teacher elicits and collects on the board or on the screen or on your board behind your camera the language that the students saw in the book, the unit of the book. The teacher tells the students, sorry, there's a mistake, there's a grammatical mistake. This is my dyslexia coming out, and I hate this, but there it is. There's my dyslexia for everybody to see. The teacher tells students that in groups, there should be an S there, they're going to produce a poster about an aspect of language from the unit. Each group chooses one of the areas of languages they want to work on. So the students have told, teacher, we saw this, we saw this, we saw this. The teacher collects this on the board. The teacher puts the students into groups, and then the students work together. They think about, what shall we try to remember? Yeah. The students work in groups, and they create a poster. And when I say a poster, I don't mean you need to buy a huge piece of paper, spend some money in the stationery store. It could be literally a piece of paper from their notebook. Yeah, a poster can be something as simple as this. And so students work in groups, and they create a poster about their chosen area of language. The students display the poster, and all the students go around and they look at each other's posters. Yep. And then the teacher asks questions to help students evaluate the work. Questions like, which one do you think explains this the best? Which one is the most attractive? You can be quite simple. Yeah. So this is not technically inquiry-based learning. This is something that any teacher can do in a regular class. You've got that class at the end of the unit. You're using it for review, but I want to go, if you can remember this, yeah? Or can it be applied to adult learning? Definitely can be. Yes, let's just look at this. That activity I just showed you, which of these challenges does it address? Hopefully my question is clear, possibly not. My question is, which of these challenges, which I mentioned before, which of these challenges are addressed by that? B, not enough class time. Well, you're going to do this review anyway. Yeah. E, finding answers. All of the answers are coming from the book. The book, everything you need is in the book that the students already have. F, unexpected language. Well, it's not unexpected language because you are reviewing the content of the book, which you have studied and which the students have studied. Finding the answers. Where do the students find the answers? In the book. C, unengaged. This comes back to that point which is in inquiry-based learning. The students will naturally be more engaged because they're doing the work, they're being creative, and they're going to produce their own poster. Well, social distancing and not being in class. In fact, the communication, yes, this is called, let me just go back. No, I might confuse you. No, I'm going to keep it like that. If you remember, it's called unit poster. Create a unit poster. Well, students can collaborate outside class and they can create maybe something digital. Yeah. So that technically is not inquiry-based learning, but it does actually enable a teacher who's not very experienced to go into the process of inquiry-based learning in an unstressful way, addressing some of those issues. And I encourage you to give it a go, try it out, and see what happens. Yeah. Instead of you summarizing the content of the unit, make the students do it. And if the students are actually showing their poster to, or their summary, which could be a video, it could be anything, no? Students are going through the inquiry-based process. Right. Now, I am thinking about time. Yes, what I want to do is I want to show you inquiry-based learning in the classroom. Infographics. Yes, I mean, some students will produce an infographic, right? I have never produced one, but somebody will do it and they will show you how to do it. If you're not good with technology, somebody will show you. Yeah, in fact, there are certain benefits of being forced to work in this particular way, and one is that students actually have access to a few more resources than in the past to interact. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's look at these 4 stages again. Engagement. Let's look at some of these things in practice. I've chosen some examples, and surprise, surprise, these do come from Oxford books. This comes from Oxford Discover, Student Book 1. This is actually Oxford Discover 2nd edition. I should have written that down, and I got the reference slightly wrong. But you see here, we start with, it actually says big question at the top, which we could also call a leading question. And this is what drives the whole unit. And we have, underneath, we have examples of kind of the objectives, not written exactly as objectives, but kind of objectives. Then we have watch a video, which is part of the engagement, establishing the topic, and then questions. I don't know if you've ever looked at the questions in Oxford Discover, but if you look at the questions in B and the questions in C, they're very nicely constructed. Oh, Padlet. Brilliant tool. Padlet is probably an ideal tool to actually share this information. I'm not a Padlet expert, but everybody says it's absolutely wonderful and a great opportunity to share stuff. Yeah. If you look at these questions, it starts with exploring the picture. Again, that's input for the topic, and then it moves on to questions which are a bit more about the students themselves. And then we have something very simple. It does not need to be complicated. Simplicity. If you can make something simple, how do you do that? That is the question which excites me kind of every single morning. Is there a rubric for posters? No, you would need to develop one or find one, but that's a good question. One thing that often people use in inquiry-based learning is the KWL chart, which is what do I know, what do I want to know, or wonder, and what did I learn? So at the beginning of this, you should ask your students, KWL chart exactly. We call it the big question chart because of this. It's linked to the particular series. So what do you know? You need students to give you information. You need to encourage them to say stuff. If students are giving you information in their first language, for me, that's not a problem, but your job is then to transfer that into English and to put it on the chart. Perhaps the most difficult part is getting students to say what they want to know. And I've seen a lot of teachers struggle with this. Because teachers say, if I ask them stuff and I don't know the answers, what's going to happen? You don't need to know the answers. You need to be getting students curious. And you don't need to find the answer for them. Don't say, oh, I don't know, I'll find out. Stop working. No. Say, I don't know. And hopefully the child or the student or the adult will come to class next day and say, teacher, I have discovered. And that's absolutely wonderful. An example in secondary, here we have Oxford Discover Futures, which is the follow-on from Oxford Discover. Here we have, you can see the leading question or the big question. What, my dyslexia just stops me reading fluently. What is the value of time? That is the question which powers the whole of the unit. And then each lesson has a sub-question, and in this case, this particular activity, this particular lesson is, how much time do you waste? No, Vanessa, it's not designed for, you could use, it's not designed for adults. We have other series designed for adults. You could, but contact your local educational consultant from Oxford University Press and see what they recommend to you. So here we have, look at the photo, complete the statements, watch the video, think about some questions, watch the video, and then communicate. It's a similar, oh, I don't know the question to that, Ezra. Good question, but I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, if you look at it, it is following a similar process to the one I showed you for primary. And at the bottom, it says discover more. We're actually going off into more of a the guided and not just the structured. Yeah, this particular series is designed for secondary school. Some of the topics are slightly more juvenile than adult topics. It could work, but it's not designed like that. Contact your local OUP people and they can give you better suggestions. So the second stage is exploration. And here, this is an example of the structure. Do you remember I showed you these three different varieties? Here, the book comes with content. It's all structured for you. This is the content you can be working with. We can go off into a more guided form of inquiry-based learning, but really, if you feel comfortable, you just work with the content of the book. Here's everything we need to answer these questions. It also gives you support for vocabulary, and I don't know if you can see, there's like a little cloud, there's like a think bubble on the right-hand side, and it says, think how are living and non-living things different? This is something we should be doing in our general classes. You know, when we're doing a reading, not just to go through the whole reading, but to kind of stop and get students to reflect on this. And again, look at this. Again, this is the next unit for the secondary school. The next lesson in the secondary school unit I was just showing you, and you can see that each one has a sub-question. So again, it's referring to the leading question or the big question, and we're coming back to it. But here you can see a lot of that ELT content. We have looking at reading strategies. We have going into the content of the reading, the vocabulary activity, and then we come to the, we're gathering information, and then there is a sharing element. So remember, in this cycle, it's not necessarily that you have to do this and then this and then this and then this. Some areas will cross over, and in fact, when you kind of do it in a slightly more organic way, it's a lot more interesting. Right, time. Yes, always worried about time. One thing about being British, I think, even though I've lived in Mexico for 25 years, I can't stop being stressed about the time, whereas most people around me are a lot more relaxed about this. Right. So, communicate. Let's move on to this. Now, we've discussed this already, and you've already given me some answers to this question. My question is, in what ways can students communicate what they have learned? All stages are important. Yes, an infographic. Yeah. Reading and speaking, yes, they can communicate through written forms or spoken forms. They can communicate through analog forms, actually writing, making an actual poster, but lots of digital ways. They could make a drama, they could make a conversation, they could use images. Oh, exit tickets. Oh, that's a brilliant thing. Yes, we're not going to go into that. Aha. Breakout rooms for the communication. Yes, if you're using one of the platforms that has, this nicely constructed breakout rooms. Mind maps. It can be done in a mind map, a role play, a drama, AFLs. Not sure what that is. You're going to have to help me with that. Portfolios. And a portfolio can be many different things. They could do an audio file. As a dyslexic person, I like writing, and writing is a great way for me to think, but sometimes it's much easier for me just to express something with an audio file. Vocaroo, V-A-R, oh God, I can't, V-A-C-A-R-O-O. Very simple tool. They can record something, send you the link, or share the link, and then other people can. Thank you very much, Maria. Yes, it was with a K, is it? I can't remember. Not sure what the spelling is. Yeah. So my point is, yes, video. I wrote a blog post about 4 years ago on our ELT global blog about using WhatsApp. I know WhatsApp is not used in all countries. Everybody uses it in Mexico. And if it's a tool that everybody uses it, why not use it as a tool for communicating? Vocaroo is with a C or with a K? You'd have to help me with the spelling, because I'm dyslexic and I can't remember. Yeah, so my point here is there are many different ways, and Padlet, I think, is a brilliant place for sharing content. Oh, in Padlet, can you pin audio and video? I don't know. Yeah, boom. If you're not sure, explore it. Yeah, brilliant. So the communication, and if you are going to do you're going to do it in groups, a good thing to do is to get students, give students different roles. Because sometimes you put them in a group and the group does nothing. But if you've given everybody a role, and you do have to train your students on this, so there's one person who is the leader, who is making sure everything is moving smoothly. There is the presenter who's actually going to present it, if it's going to be an audio or a face-to-face presentation. There's the timekeeper, making sure that everything is under control in terms of the time. There is the resource organizer who is helping, make sure everything's in the right place. Actually, during the pandemic, a lot of this can be done asynchronously, by getting students to work outside the class. It does mean training your students. I do know this. And the recorder, maybe there's a person whose job is to collect this stuff. Yeah, these will not work well the first time. Remember, anytime you try something the first time, it typically doesn't work. I need to drink some water. I've run out of coffee. I'm on the water now. Right. So it's a suggestion. And if you're going to try this, remember, it's going to take a while to train your students and to train yourself. Yes, inquiry-based learning is similar to a project-based learning. There's quite a lot of crossover between the two. Right, and the reflection. The last part, the reflection. If you're using the KWL chart, we have the third part, which is what did you learn? And here we want the students to be, if you are controlling the chart, you are eliciting from your students, you will be transferring information onto this chart. I've seen a lot of teachers, they tend to do this at the end of the unit or end of the big question. It doesn't have to be like that. I think it's much better if you are constantly going to your students and asking them what they learned. And this leads me, thinking about my time, to thinking about questions. I did say that one of the challenges we have in inquiry-based learning is asking good questions. And I've given you here 8 examples of some questions that we might be asking to our students. Some of these questions relate to thinking about the content, and some of these questions relate to thinking about the process. I'm not going to ask you to type this into the chat, but I'd like you just to think about this. Which of these units, which of these questions focus on the content and which ones are focusing on the learning process? I'm going to go through them. Some are both. Yeah, I mean, the questions, asking good questions is such a complicated and exciting area. The things that excite me most about language teaching and learning is how complicated it is and trying to simplify things. Metacognition, exactly, content. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. I've got a couple of minutes. What have we learned? Yeah? What did you learn? That's content. B, what else do we need to know? So that might be content and process. So okay, we've learned this. What else are we kind of missing? Yeah. What can we do to find out? That would be very much about the process. So this would be in the last stage of the KWL chart, but not just at the end of the process. You should be asking your students these questions all the way through. Yeah. D, I like D. I think it's a great question. What are the 3 most interesting things you have learned? Yeah. And she's, oh, this and this and this. Yeah. It's a very concrete question. You do need to start with concrete questions early on, and then you can go to the more open questions. Question E, what went well? That's 3 words, but that's a quite sophisticated, that's real metacognition. Think about the whole process, everything you've done, what went really well. And the opposite would be what didn't work well. And that should then be followed up with why. But those questions don't work unless the students are kind of in the process or trained. G, what could you have done differently? Reflecting on the process again. And H, what might you do next time? So some of these questions are about the process, learning for life, beyond the classroom, academic study skills, all of this stuff, and some are about the content. And there are hundreds and hundreds of questions. So, thinking about the time, I am now going to go to my conclusions, and after the conclusions, we're going to come to the questions. And my colleagues have been collecting some of your questions, and I will do my best to answer those questions. But first of all, the conclusions. I've just got 4 simple conclusions, all on one slide, all in one go. If you think this is interesting, if you think it is going to be beneficial for you, start from where you are. Remember, we mentioned the structured, the guided, and the open ways of working. Start very structured, where you control everything and you train your students little by little. Asking the right questions. This can be done actually some of this works pretty well in a remote format because students have access to more content. Practice asking the right questions. The right questions is so important. I am fascinated by questions and what is right, which is the correct one to ask, when, and exactly why, all of this stuff. Encourage students' curiosity, and this links to the last one. You don't need to know the answers. If students are going to be curious, they're going to ask lots of questions, and you do not need to know the answers. All you need to know is that you are developing curiosity. So many teachers I've met go, I don't want to ask them questions because they're going to ask me questions I don't know. You don't need to know. If they become curious, they're going to be more engaged in your classroom. And if they can come to your next class and say, teacher, I know the answer to that question, you have empowered somebody. CCQs, I mean, yes, concept checking questions. Yeah, not exactly the same, but they're quite closely related. Scamper questions I don't know. You keep asking me this and I don't know the answer to that question. Right, timing. I now am going to go on to questions. My colleagues have been collecting some questions. I'm going to go from the first questions. I'm going to try to answer them if my dyslexia doesn't stand in the way. And, yes, in fact, questions. I've got a slide with just a big question mark. It's an acronym, but for what? I'm actually going to write it down so I don't forget, because this is an opportunity for me to learn as well. Right. Yeah, Google it, exactly. That's what I'm going to do. Yes, but as I go through the questions, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this slide, because if you're interested, there is a paper we have, I think it's 4 or 5 pages on this, which has some of the content that we were looking at, and I want you to be aware of this. And if you haven't got it, you can go and have a look at it. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to read your names. I will mispronounce them because my dyslexia does that to me all the time. So I've got some questions here and I'm going to answer them. Right. Go through again. If I can do this, I just got to call, which shouldn't have come through. Which age group does IBL apply to? Kind of any age group. You can do a little bit of it in kindergarten. It works. I mean, the examples I showed you from primary are very much inquiry based. Secondary and adult, any age group, pretty much. Is it possible? So that's from Mohammed. Maria Victoria. Question: is it possible to apply this model to adult learning? Yes, it does. Maybe you're not going to do the full inquiry-based approach. Maybe you're going to do kind of one part of a class or one class in that particular way. And remember, the unit poster, though technically not inquiry-based learning, it follows an inquiry-based structure. And depending on your context, I think it could work quite well. Another Mohammed As-Saran. Up to what extent this method can... to first graders. The example I showed you from, which came from Oxford Discover, is for first graders of primary. It does depend on how much time you've had, how much language they've already got. It depends on many different things. If you're not sure, contact your local educational consultant from Oxford University Press, and they can guide you onto whether that's going to work. It kind of depends mostly, I would have said, on your openness and your knowledge of this approach. Deborah, question, how can we differ inquiry-based learning from inquiry-based, task-based learning from inquiry-based learning in teaching? Oh, I don't know the answer to that question exactly, because I would need to, well, no, task, I would say they cross over. I would say that part of what you're doing in task-based learning is part of what you're doing in inquiry-based learning. Good question. I don't have a full answer to that. There's a certain amount of crossover. I think inquiry-based learning is a bit richer and a bit more student-led. Task-based tends to be constructed by the teacher, whereas true inquiry-based is coming from the students. The model again. If you want to know the model, Vanessa, in this paper I'm showing you on this slide, you will find this model. So if you want to have a quick look at that. Okay. Not very good at doing this. So yes, Vanessa, you asked, can you see the model again? It's going to be a bit difficult for me to go back in my slides, but you can get it from that paper. There are books on this. There are references at the end of this paper. So if you download this paper and you want more information, that's Maria Victoria, you can go and find that. CCQs, concept checking questions, are pretty much designed to make sure that students have understood perhaps a grammatical concept. Those questions are a little bit different because it's very much about how much students have got in terms of the content and how much they're comprehending the process they're going through. So they are a little bit different. So questions. Anshu, probably can't pronounce it. Dyslexia does not help me. How to develop the habit of asking questions. My recommendation for you as a teacher to develop your skill in asking questions is to write them down first. I plan to say these. If you go through the process of writing down your questions, that will enable you to be ready with them. It will take a lot of time, but I strongly recommend it. So just like trying to think off the top of your head the questions, if you write down, these are the questions I think I'm going to ask, that will help you in the process. It is a process. Source material. Source material for inquiry-based, the library, the internet. These are places. If you look at the examples that we have from the secondary school material, which would be appropriate secondary school and high school material, Carolina, you ask about material for 16 to 18-year-olds. The internet, but it's a dangerous place in some ways, so we do need to say, we need to be careful about how students are going to use that. Here we go. So Sanja, would you say inquiry-based learning was the same as problem-based learning? No, they are slightly different things, but there's a certain amount of crossover. I don't have time to go into that, and there are some fuzzy areas between these things. I would say that it's no, I don't have a full answer. There's a certain amount of crossover. Go off and explore. Yeah, I have not sat down and worked out the actual divisions between project and inquiry based. It's a good question. I don't have the full answer. Right. And one more question here. What level of students are suitable for inquiry-based learning? Oh, level. Do you mean language level or grade? The higher the level of language they have, the more they can do. If you want to get students into this, the unit poster thing can be done from an A1 and A2 level. That is not true inquiry-based, but it's following a similar process. If you allow students access to their first language as part of the process of working in inquiry-based learning, then you can support your students. So it's an interesting question. Yes, it can be done, but it does require it does require skills, perhaps more skills from you, the teacher. Right. Okay, so I think it's probably time for me to wrap up. I am going to move on to my final slide, which is my thank you slide. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to pass you over, or my colleague is going to take over. Jocelyn is going to come back. I'm going to wait for him to